It's not predictable, and the reason is money supply is irrelevant to inflation. I know that's sort of like an apostate view for the Austrians and monetarists in the audience, and I have a lot of respect for all the work that's been done in that field from Irving Fisher onward, but it's not the determining factor. The determining factor relating money supply to inflation is velocity, which is the turnover of money. That's a psychological phenomenon, behavioral phenomenon, which the Fed cannot control. But if I'm depressed or worried or more into precautionary savings and I stay home and watch TV, my money has velocity of zero. And I remind people that $7 trillion times zero is zero, at least where I went to school. So the point is, velocity is the driver, it's psychological, the Fed can't control it. I always say it's a sad day when a central bank wants inflation and can't get it, but they can't get it, they've forgotten how. I could remind them, but they don't know how themselves. Yeah, that's right. One of the frustrations in speaking or writing, whatever, is the intertemporal effects. Inflation, as we see it, there are base effects, there are supply chain effects. It's transitory. We're going to tip fairly quickly into disinflation and deflation. However, if you go out 2 years, we're absolutely going to have inflation. So it's difficult. People say, "Oh, make a remind." No, it's just we're going to have disinflation for now, maybe borderline deflation. We're going to have to be really careful about that. We might have a global recession in 2022. I mean, the latest Atlanta Fed GDP projection is 0.2% growth for the third quarter. By the way, that's down from 6.3 earlier in the quarter. Yeah, but when you strip out the noise, that could be negative. So the U.S. could actually be in a recession. We'll find out next year, but we could be in a recession right now. And the rest of the world's not far behind. Japan's there, Europe is close. China, they lie about their numbers, but they're probably, they've produced the worst growth since 2008. But that said, when you get into 2023, beyond that, I would expect an inflationary world for reasons that have nothing to do with what we're talking about, but more demographically driven. It's not predictable, and the reason is money supply is irrelevant to inflation. I know that's sort of like an apostate view for the Austrians and monetarists in the audience, and I have a lot of respect for all the work that's been done in that field from Irving Fisher onward, but it's not the determining factor. The determining factor relating money supply to inflation is velocity, which is the turnover of money. That's a psychological phenomenon, behavioral phenomenon, which the Fed cannot control. The Fed can control M0. They can stick the landing. They can make that number whatever they want, and they have. I'm well aware of the growth that you're describing. But velocity, just to give a simple example, if I'm feeling good, if I'm feeling prosperous, if prospects are good, and I want to go out to dinner and take my friends and drinks on me, that's one state of the world. And I tip the waiter, and the waiter goes home and takes an Uber and tips the Uber driver, and the Uber driver puts gas in his car. Well, in that example, my money has velocity of 3. $1 I start with produces $3 of goods and services. But if I'm depressed or worried or more into precautionary savings and I stay home and watch TV, my money has velocity of zero. And I remind people that $7 trillion times zero is zero, at least where I went to school. So the point is, velocity is the driver, it's psychological, the Fed can't control it. I always say it's a sad day when a central bank wants inflation and can't get it, but they can't get it, they've forgotten how. I could remind them, but they don't know how themselves. I find forecasting Fed policy is the easiest thing I've ever done because they can be relied upon to blunder every time. And we're watching a movie we've seen before. So here's what's going to happen, because here's what did happen. May 2013, Bernanke announces the taper. He didn't use the word, but he implied that. November 2013, they start the taper. November 2014, they finish the taper. No more net purchases. And then we get ready for the liftoff. March 2015, Yellen removes the word patient from the statement. That's your clue, that's your magic word. Yep. They're going to raise rates. But they didn't raise rates until December 2015. It took that long to raise rates, but they did. And the next 25 basis point increase was December 2016. At that point, they got a little mojo, and then they kept raising rates. Jay Powell comes in, he raises them throughout 2018, and you're up to 2.25. What happens next? From October 1st to December 24th, 2018, the stock market fell 20%. In other words, the Fed proved that they cannot normalize. They proved that they cannot raise rates, they cannot reduce the balance sheet, they cannot do what they want to do. and nor can they get inflation because they never did. So we saw that whole movie. Now, what are they doing now? So then they do it in reverse. You had the Christmas Eve massacre, 2018. And the week between Christmas and New Year's, Powell gives some kind of speeches. I guess we better stop raising rates. That signaled that. Well, at least lawyers look at both sides of the issue. It's good. The only thing good about Jay Powell is he's not an economist. I consider PhD in economics to be a disability if you're actually trying to figure out what's going on in the economy. But so then 2019 comes along, and Powell progressively lowers rates. And then the pandemic, he gets back down to zero. Okay, so then a year goes by. What are they going to do? We're going to taper, and they are. In November, they'll start the taper. They'll finish it by June of 2022, and then we'll get ready for the second liftoff. They're doing the same thing over again, and they already proved they can't do it. So as they proceed to do it, except one difference, the market saw what happened between 2013 and 2018. They watched the same movie the rest of us did.
Yeah.
So they're anticipating the ending. They know how this ends. So the correction will start soon. Now, just to be clear, the S&P is in a huge bubble, an historic bubble. That does not mean go out and short the S&P. That's a good way to lose money. I analogize it to, there's an 18-wheeler coming down the road, 80 miles an hour. It's heading over a cliff. You see the cliff, you see the truck, and you jump out in front and say, hey, stop. This truck's not going to stop. You're going to get flat and you're going to get killed. So shorting the S&P is a really good way to lose money today because bubbles, people say they can't see bubbles. Bubbles are easy to see. What's hard is knowing where they end, knowing how long they go on. So I don't want to, it is a bubble. I feel confident about saying that. I don't want to say it's going to pop soon. It might be next year. It might require some other evidence. But we're starting to see that. And what Danielle described about the yield curve flattening, that's regardless of the absolute level of interest rates or the level of nominal rates, it's the spread that counts. In this case, this is called a bear flattener. So that's another sign of a recession, in addition to what the Atlanta Fed is putting out, in addition to a lot of other signs around the world. So I always say, if the perception is here, the stock market is running on a narrative. If the perception is here and the reality is here, reality always wins, but it can take time. So yeah, I would expect to have some dry powder. But everything John said about cryptos is correct. I mean, I'm not a crypto advocate, but I don't own them and I don't recommend them, but I am a crypto student. I've been doing that for 10 years, going back to the original papers. I've been doing it for a very long time. I have some views that are probably the only one in the world. If you have cash and things fall apart, you can pivot. If you're in private equity, for example, good luck getting your money back from Henry Kravis.
Right.
Great firm, but they're not going to give you your money back. So people, they don't sell what they want, they sell what they can. But if you have cash, you're the person who can look around, you can pivot quickly, you can go shopping in the wreckage. So that basically it's not the money call on every asset class in the world. That's valuable, and people underestimate the value of the optionality, number one. Number two, it reduces the volatility of the rest of your portfolio. So if you have stock, gold, real estate, and so forth, you can sleep a little better at night. It's the opposite of leverage, in other words. So yeah, I recommend some cash, maybe a big slug, maybe 30%. I find forecasting Fed policy is the easiest thing I've ever done because they can be relied upon to blunder every time. The determining factor relating money supply to inflation is velocity, which is the turnover of money. That's a psychological phenomenon, behavioral phenomenon, which the Fed cannot control.